Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to the May edition of Molten Music Monthly. This month's Molten Music Monthly is sponsored by RYK. It's a little company that makes some fabulous utilities and mixers at remarkably affordable prices. I'd like to point out the S-Mix, which is an 8-channel compact 8-channel mixer with some interesting routing ideas. They're sending me one for review, which should be here shortly, and so I'll be able to get into that. But do go and check them out. There's a link in the description. You'll also find them on Modular Grid. And thank you, RYK, for your support. It's always desperately appreciated. And if you would like to sponsor the Molten Music Monthly and be in this little slot, then just get in touch. Right, as I try to understand what it is my hair's doing, this month, of course, we're talking about the dust settling on yet another Superbooth, a fabulous festival of synthesizers and boxes that go beep and bleeping, control voltages and MIDI and software, synthesizers, modular, people, music, the beating heart of electrons and signals that move and permeate. It's just a fantastic time. I was there for a whole day almost with my daughter, who I think slightly more than begrudgingly came along with me, and I think had a lovely time sitting around in airports and on aeroplanes for most of the time. And of course I didn't see anything because I spoke to people and talked to people and sort of poked around a little bit, but it was a good time. Next year I do hope to go for the full whack, because I think finally my family has grown up enough to be able to cope without me for a couple of days. And going into this monthly, I would very much like to thank Nick Batt at Sonic State and other videographers and content creators who have done a fantastic job of covering the Superbooth show, so that people like myself, who can't all get there or can only get there for a short period of time, can dwell on and ponder and look at and enjoy all of the amazing bits of gear that were on show and being demonstrated. The people over there who do the videos, I mean Sonic State in particular, are just awesome, and they are greatly appreciated. And of course I've stolen all of your footage to throw about into my monthly here. I hope that's okay. Anyway, shall we get on with it? Right, I'm going to start with the Moog Messenger. This is an important release, I think, and I absolutely, when I first saw the pictures and the photos coming through, it was just like, well, okay, not sure what to think about this. It seems to be, it's a different direction, it's a new direction. Is it a positive, is it a negative direction? Are we going forward into something? Are we homogenizing and just becoming like a generic synthesizer company? Because that is the fear since Moog were bought out by InMusic a while ago now. There was this anxiousness about it, that Moog are going to lose all of their quirk, their uniqueness, their historical weirdness. And it's a genuine problem, because Moog make some very unique and interesting things, and that's a huge benefit to our community of synthesizer enthusiasts who like to be able to use things that do things differently. Which brings me sort of back to the Messenger. So when you first look at it, what many people thought, I think, was that, it's a very Korg-like, it's very Mini-Logue-like. It's very much like their Modwave and those sorts of things. It's that sort of form factor. And that kind of automatically throws up these ideas. It's going to be a bit plasticky, perhaps. It's perhaps not going to be as analog as perhaps we think it should be. However, I would just like to throw into this general discussion that if it is like a Korg, then actually that's no bad thing, because Korg are on fire these days. They make fantastic gear, software-based sometimes, hardware-based sometimes, and I have no problem with Moog emulating some of the amazing stuff that Korg may be doing. But let's put that to one side and focus exactly on what the Messenger is. Because this is one of the things I actually did get to have a play on. It's the first place that I went. When I got there, first thing Saturday morning, I went straight there, and it was already packed. But I hung around long enough to get a bit of a go. And my impression of the Messenger is that it's a bloody good little synth. The construction of it, the physicality of it, while not overly heavy, is solid and metal, and you instantly lose all of that plastic synth vibe as soon as you lay your hands upon it. The knobs are good, it settles really well, the layout is clear and nice. It's not immediately Moog, not like the grandmother, not like the matriarch, not like the Mother 32, or that series of synthesizer units. This is something else. And in fact, I kind of dwelling on it, I feel that it's much more like the Oberheim OB1, kind of crossed with the Novation Bass Station 2. So it has modern control systems and yet a very, very vintagey vibe. So it still has quirk. It still has a quaintness about it, even though it's got quite streamlined lines and feels much more like a production line produced synthesizer, which of course it will be. But in playing with it, what I really liked was, first of all, I could get out of whatever mess it was the person before me had put it in, because once I found the preset buttons, it's like, oh, okay, great, return to a sound. So it's a synthesizer that has a digital system behind it, enabling you to give you presets and digital control, MIDI control, and all that kind of stuff. It has an ARP and a sequencer inside for movement and change. You've got parameter lock and other bits and pieces as well, which, as I say, kind of comes a bit from a Korg way, but that's a good thing. That's a positive way into it. It's not trying to reinvent anything in particular or push out into new and exciting new things. It is a solid 2-oscillator monophonic synthesizer. And perhaps the coolest feature about it is that they've finally included some resonance compensation in the filter. Normally in a ladder filter and a Moog ladder filter, you get this drop off as you put the resonance up. Resonance goes up, the general overall volume dissipates in order to focus on that resonance. And it gives the Moog sort of a mellow sound overall, because as you start to wind it up and push it, it then sort of backs off a little bit. Whereas this does not do that. It can, but when you enable the resonance boost, whatever it's called, I don't know, it has this very, very modern, very in-your-face, edgy sound to it, and that was particularly nice, I have to say. I'm sure reviews of it and information will be coming through on it very, very soon, but my first impressions of it were that it was a bloody good little synth, a good job. It's not an out there synth like a lot of the Moog stuff has been, and that's a shame. I think we will be mourning the loss of some of the Moog stuff as we go forward, like the Sub 35, for instance, has just been discontinued. And with that, you have this, lovely rakish thing and the wooden sides on it that give Moog very much its unique sort of signature look. And the Messenger doesn't have that. But with things like the Muse as well, we're sort of moving forward, because Moog has always evolved and developed over time. And perhaps we are now moving towards a new future that hopefully retains the vibe and the feel of Moog, while having to allow it to evolve into something which is successful and ultimately moves us forward. The price is also interesting, because it's $799 or $899 or thereabouts, so it's slightly more than a Mother 32, but a lot less than the Sub 35 or Sub 37, or even the Matriarch and the Grandmother. And so it makes it more affordable, which is interesting. And I think because it's put more in the price range of things like the Mother 32 and the Subharmonicon, what it does do is it brings a Moog synth to people who just want to play synths. They don't want to get a degree in engineering. They don't want to feel they have to be some kind of hipster synth nerd with a really cool spacey rack of these 60 HP modules with your DFAM and your Labyrinth, and you go, oh yeah man, I'm just really so into patching all of this. If you just want a synthesizer that has a Moog sound, that has a keyboard and a sequencer put in there, couple of oscillators to play with, whack and great big filter, then this absolutely does that job. So I think it opens up the Moog ecosystem to a greater number of people for a relatively affordable price. And I think that is perhaps the key takeaway from the Messenger. Right, I need to keep this short and snappy because I've got a lot to get through, so I'm sorry about that very long rambling Messenger thing, but it felt it felt it was an important synthesizer to talk about as best I could. So let's just snap through a load of stuff, starting with the RYK Time Slice. This is from RYK, who design... Jake is fantastic at designing extraordinary modules, extraordinary looking and sounding modules that do extraordinary things. I'm absolutely captivated by everything that they do. I think it's just fantastic. It has such a class to it, even if behind the scenes it's relatively simple, or it has relatively simple features. This one, the Time Slice, I think it's called, is a 4-channel recorder. So it's a recorder recording audio. You plug audio in, it's got 4 ins, 4 outs. You put stuff in, you press record, it records it, and records it on this gorgeous looking circular dial, a bit like an iPad app, a bit like Loopy or whatever it's called on the iPad, but in a hardware, real proper, chin stroking way. Oh yes, look at that go round. Yes, I can see the audio, I can visualize it as well as hear it. So anyway, you can record into these channels up to 3 minutes, I think, on each one. So you can have it just sitting there doing your radio music stuff, or your background sounds, or environmental sounds, or just samples and stuff that you're going to thread through your performance. That's one element. But there are a lot more elements involved in this. You can loop stuff. You can reverse stuff. You can sort of splice and slice stuff, I think. You can bounce it around. And you can also pitch it. And the interesting things about the pitching is that it has an algorithm built in to allow you to pitch, shift and time stretch completely independently. So you don't get that speeding up of the sample as you go up and down in pitch. It stays the same, which is very interesting for keeping sync between loops and transposition. And it just gives it a very different flavour to what we've come to expect. And that's nice. You can modulate the pitch. Now, I talked to Jake about whether, does that mean it's just like a sampler? You can just throw in a 1 volt per octave and sequence stuff. And he said, yeah, sorta. So I don't think it's necessarily designed as a sampler per se for creating instruments and playing those, but I kind of feel that it couldn't actually do that without too much of a problem. I mean, it's currently in prototype. It should be... he should be finishing it off over the summer, as far as I understand it. So I think elements like that are going to reveal themselves as we get closer and closer to the release date. But as it is, it's a fabulous way of bringing signals in, capturing stuff and having that loop and playback, or you could use it a bit like a delay line going through things that you can then splice and resample into other things. It's just interesting, and he always has a fascinating approach to stuff that requires a little bit of thought. It requires quite a lot of the user. It's not always instant surface and intuitive. It has levels to it, but those levels and that dive into those levels always gets rewarded by a fascinating adventure in either sound or processing, or in this case with time, space and interface. Next we have an interesting arrival from Instruo. I have one here. It turned up yesterday, which I'm very, very pleased about. It's a fantastic little thing. I mean, look how cute it is. Look how cute it is. It's called the Seashell, which is an interesting name, and it looks just like it looks like a module. It looks like you can plug it into your Eurorack and it would be something like, a complex oscillator, that kind of vibe, when in actual fact it's an entire semi-modular desktop synthesizer. It's designed to be a sound generator all of its own in its little ecosystem of stuff, and that has brought some interesting bits with it. It has a whacking great big wave folder right across the middle, so there's your sine waves into craziness kind of vibe. It has a filter. Does it? Yeah. It has a filter built in here also. So you're having kind of an East Coast, West Coast conversation going on within these two things. You've got 2 oscillators, which is going to give you the opportunity for cross-modulation as well as juicy, gooey sounds. So your starting point, if you like, is this fully analog dual oscillator, wave folding, filter endowed synthesizer voice semi-modular. You can use it completely unpatched, or there is a little bit of patching you can do. But that's only a part of it. The other part is that the whole thing has a digital layer which allows you to suck all of the parameters out and stick them into your DAW, stick them into your computer. There's a VST plugin style version of this that you run that can completely control it from within your DAW. So you can sequence, automate, move, MIDI control, all of that stuff directly from within your software using the analogness of the hardware. Now, of course, your knobs are never going to be pointing to the same thing as the thing that you set it to be doing, but that's okay. I haven't actually played with it yet to find out whether there's a good way of reconnecting with that. We'll see. We'll see how that workflow goes, because with a hybrid workflow, working software and hardware together, it has some challenges. It brings in levels of stuff that you don't always want. I don't want to have to necessarily go to software in order to do a thing that I'd much rather do on the front panel. But we will see what that interaction is like, because that's an unknown at this point. A lot of people have likened it to the No Coast from Make Noise, which fills me slightly with horror. Because I could never work out the No Coast. I had one for a year or so, and it made me feel like I knew what I was doing, made me feel important just to own one. But in actual use, it just made me feel more and more stupid, because I could not work out what was happening, what was going on. Now, I know plenty of people love the No Coast, and that's fine. I got rid of mine because it was just too depressing. So I hope that with this, that I will find an easier way into it. I hope that this will reveal itself and be engaging rather than alienating, which is what I felt the No Coast has been in my experience. So it's going to be interesting. Is it more like an Erebus? Is it the sort of synth that invites you into play, or is it one that you're going to have to puzzle over? These are the questions that I hope to answer in my review, which will be coming soon. I haven't sped this up in the slightest, have I? Right, okay, FrapTools Magnolia. The name of our favourite paint. But this, in essence, this is FrapTools, who are a modular maker, taking all of their experience of building modules as they have over the last decade or so, and pulling all of that together and cramming it, forcing it, resisting it into a keyboard paradigm. Now, that's a difficult thing to do, because modular has this open architecture, whereas as soon as you put something into a keyboard paradigm, you have to enforce certain rules and routings and signal flows. Otherwise, it doesn't serve any purpose. It just may as well be modular. And so I think they found that a very, very challenging and interesting experience in having to make those decisions and having to enforce those decisions upon the user. From a user's point of view, well, it's just a massive adventure in sound. Is what it appears to be. And it brings together, not dissimilar to this, it brings together East Coast, West Coast ideas, but also FM. Talks a lot about FM. Cockerel's talking a lot about FM today. So what they say is that this is an FM synthesizer without all of the bother, without all of the complexity. The term FM synthesis, it sort of annoys me, drives me a little bit nuts, because Yamaha came along and created the DX7, which used algorithms in order to pull together the idea of smashing pitched oscillators against each other in order to create musical sound. And it had to generate these algorithms. It had to enforce the way that these things were put together in ratios and such like in order to keep it even remotely musical. However, when we talk about FM in modular terms, in other more linear terms, we're talking about everything from vibrato, which is just a slight wobble in pitch, up into chaos and clangs. And sometimes I think when we describe something as an FM synth, there's this automatic association we make with electric piano sounds and bell sounds that you get on a DX7. I don't think this is it. This is all about using frequency modulation to modulate musically different pitches, different oscillators and filters together using audio rate modulation. And that creates a certain vibe. It creates this crackly chaos and clangs, but it's not using algorithms, so it's not forcing you down the musical DX7 route. It's really being a more of a playful, adventurous place that uses an analog FM structure. Now, I'm sitting here thinking, what on earth are you talking about? And you would be right, because I don't know that makes any sense. But I think I'm just trying to get across that we need to be careful when things are said, this is an FM synth, because while that may be scientifically true, that's not what we necessarily associate with being FM. On the other side, what FrapTools have done has brought together the complexity of what they do in modular into a keyboard form. And the result is quite a remarkable range of sounds and a control system which I think throws all of that possibility up just to a range of knobs without it having to be an impossibly complex and convoluted programming disaster. So overall, the Magnolia gives us 8 voices of complexity, of analog oscillations, of wavefolding, of through zero FM, of modulation and filtering. All of the best stuff from FrapTools pulled into some kind of mighty musical form. Intellijel were there for the first time in years, apparently. They had a couple of interesting things. First thing was they stole all the good ideas from Befacco for their case. Now, Intellijel have brought the, what's it called, the palette case, the performance case, their 7U case. Got a handle on the top, 7U, 1U at the top, 2 rows of 3U. It's been a fantastic standard as like a high quality performance case for many, many years. Befacco came along and said, you know, we've got some ideas on that. We think you should be able to move the 1U row about the place, you know, up and down like that. We think that it should have more inputs and outputs at the back and more possibilities with that. And also we think it should be able to be mounted on a really great big monitor arm with a VESA thing on the back. And I thought all of those things were brilliant ideas, and so I bought 2 of those cases, and I really like them. So Intellijel have come back and say, hey, we've got a new version of our case. It's you can now move the 1U row. It's got more I/O out the back, and it can be VESA mounted on an arm. Top job, Intellijel. Well done. I imagine that took you, I don't know, took you 5 minutes in a pub to work out those features, but it's a positive step forward. I'm not saying that it's not. We all borrow from each other, and the fact that their case is now better because of what Befacco did, then that's a useful, positive thing. And their lid is slightly better, I think, the way that it slots in. Apparently, they didn't demonstrate that; they just talked about it. But it doesn't have latches on the side anymore; it just slots in. Whereas a lid on this, which is like a spill lid, plastic transparent lid, you actually have to put this on with a Velcro strap, which I quite like, I have to say, because it allows you to apply the sort of pressure that you want to all of your patch cables on the top, and you know, to not have to squeeze it all down. You can have it on a little bit lighter, which is a positive thing. Anyway, by the by, so there's a new 7U case. That's great. Well done. Good job. Right, moving on. They also had the Jelly mix. Now this is really very good because we've recently had the assembler from Create Audio, which is here, which is an absolute keeper, that is here now doing all the mixing on my disaster of synthesizer, desktop and modular kind of stuff, and it's brilliant. I like that. I like the form factor, I like the compact nature, I like the fact that it's focused on doing synths. This is very similar. The Jelly mix, yeah, Jelly mix. However, Intellijel have done it in a bit more of a premium way. It's a metal box, it's slightly bigger, got more room around the knobs, but it's 5 stereo channels, a couple of auxes, and you've got a headphone and mix output. I think that's more or less it. So not as many channels, not perhaps as many features, although you do have an overall EQ filter at the end. You've also got high pass filters on the individual channels, so it has some nice bits and pieces in there. So So great. I'm not quite sure of the price. I'm sure it's probably going to be twice the price of this, but it is a very premium thing. But I really approve of more of these desktop type mixers coming out that don't have all the craziness. You don't need all of that EQ and all that stuff knocking about up here. You just want something simple that you can plug your synth into in order to make your sound, and perhaps take the mixing out of your case because it just takes up room, whereas it's quite an easy thing to have externally, I think, with the right bits and pieces. So that's very good. I like that very much. The other thing they had was Swells, which I believe is taking the fog reverb from their C legs delay, if I'm right, adding on a bunch of other algorithms too, so it has about 9 different reverb algorithms, and creating this open reverb where you have a lot of access and control over individual parameters within that reverb. Far more control than you would ever need, but Intellijel are very much into far too much control. So that's a good thing. I'm sure that's a good thing. It seemed to be in prototype stage. It wasn't really something they were pushing as this product is available now, but should be coming soon. Right, moving on to something a little bit different. This is the Econ 6 from Morphor. Now Morphor, a while ago released a module called the Plectrum. No, it's called the Plectrum, I think. And the idea was that it's a module that's based on BBD Bucket Brigade delay chips, and they were using it to do physical modelling through Car Plus Strong. That is the idea. If you have a super short delay, tiny eeny weeny delay and a high feedback, you can ping it with something and it gives this string type plucked sound. That's the idea, and we use it in all sorts of things, and it's a useful thing. We use it in certain modules and bits and pieces. Use it to give you that sustained plucked string sound. We like it. So Morphor took a whole bunch of their Plectrum modules, stuck them together, and thought, let's make this into a synthesizer. So they have. And it's called the Econ 6. 6 voices, 6 BBD resonators inside, and the sound that was coming off it was quite brilliant. I mean, it has a very stringy sound to it, a very string machine sound, I suppose, but very sustained because you have all this high feedback going in to try to keep the energy going, because you sort of ping it with something. You need a source. And so within the synthesizer, you've got noise, which is what you commonly use for Car Plus Strong, but you've also got an oscillator and an external input, so you can ping it kind of with anything. And it then generates and resonates and sustains, and you have 6 voices of this to play with. The interface is interesting. You've kind of got sources over here that you do stuff with. You've got resonators over here that you can affect with stuff, filtering, other bits and pieces, modulation system in the middle to mess it all about. But it had quite an exciting sound. There's something quite edgy about it, something that it's just riding on the edge. There's almost like no reason for this sound to exist. It's not being generated through oscillation or something like that, although of course evidently it is, because it's a waveform that's going to... Anyway, it's not being generated by something spinning. It's generated by a sound hitting something and feeding back, and it's that builds upon itself in order to generate the sound. And that's just energy. That's just dripping in energy, and that's quite exciting. Neuzeit Instruments The Drop. This looked completely unimpressive in photos. If you look at it face down, as I've seen in many an article on it, and I even talked about it, I think, on Sonic State, and was just like, all right, so it's a MIDI controller. Whoopee-doo, a MIDI controller. Ooh. So, yeah, they need to show it in action, because it wasn't until I saw some videos of it from Superbooth, and you actually started moving around it and you saw the interaction with it, you thought, oh, I know that actually this is something a little bit different. So on the surface you have 8 channels, I think, 8 faders, and then above that a whole bunch of knobs. I think it might be a 4x8 grid, can't remember now. You're probably looking at it behind me now and can tell me what it is exactly, but it's a whole bunch of knobs, encoders and faders that have LED halos. And then on the left you have this panel that allows you to select snapshots. Now that in itself is quite cool, and every time you select a snapshot, the knobs, the lights around the knobs move, so you know what everything is. So you could potentially go from value to value. You could go from a patch on a synth hit a snapshot, make another patch, hit a snapshot, and then move between the two. So very brilliant at becoming like a live performance MIDI programmer. So rather than using a MIDI controller to go, oh yes, I've mapped into the filter and I'm just going to move that a little bit, that's great, look at me, I'm using my hand rather than a mouse, how fantastic. So rather than that, you are setting up a patch on the whole thing and then swapping to another patch, because it sends out controller messages to change everything or as much as you want. And that is quite interesting. But then there's more, in that the snapshot system on the left can be synced to clock, so that it will swap snapshots in a sequence or in at a particular time, like launching a scene in Ableton Live. You can just hit a button and it will come in on the next full bar or the next 4 bars or whenever it is you set it up to do it. And it will also morph from one snapshot to the other, so you can have a complete patch set up on your MIDI synth and then another one which is very different, and it can slowly change from one to the other, which is flipping brilliant, really. So this is it's the kind of thing where you think, well, can't we do that already in something? And I think, no, I don't know that you can. MIDI controllers tend to be very much instant and of the moment and that thing. And I've just mapped my mod wheel to the filter and I'm going, that's great, and now I'm going off to do something else. You don't tend to use MIDI controllers, oddly, as programmers. Does that make sense? Because with this, it's like be great for something like the Nymphus, which I have over here, which likes MIDI control, and you could set that up to control that and move and automate between different patches as you go. Really quite interesting. Really quite interesting. OXI Instruments had a new version of their One. Now this is a fantastic looking sequencer. I really do love the look. I love the sparkle, I love the colour, I love the way it seems to work. I've always been a fan of the Yamaha Tenori, or a sort of a matrix sequencer where you have a nice array of buttons that you can just go tap, 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 and it's scaled and it picks out those notes and it can be beautiful and you have a wonderful, wonderful time. I've always liked that, and I see that in the One. There's an element of that kind of joyful playfulness in that sequencer. However, this version 2 now just takes it much, much further down all sorts of avenues. It adds more tracks, so that each track can actually be 8 tracks. It can be a multi-track. It has a performance overview, so you can access mutes very easily, transposition very easily, and other bits of modulation. There's a bigger focus on rhythm, whereas previously it was really all about melody. Now they've built in a lot more rhythmic tools with probability and stochastic, this, that, and the other bits and pieces, in order to allow you to create patterns much more easily. And it is a pattern-based sequencer, very much about creating and launching patterns like you would perhaps in Ableton Live. Again, it's sort of a scene-led sort of thing. But I mean, I've seen it in use with Gaz. He's always a big advocate for this thing, and was raving about the version 2. So it's something which I've never had a play with, but I'd very much like to, because I understand that it's quite a phenomenal place to generate both melody and now rhythm. So yeah. Now, I don't particularly resonate with 10/10 music. Particularly, I know there are people that do. There are people that love absolutely what they do. I find it kind of just a bit too layered, a bit too menu driven, touchscreen awkwardness on in Modular. It's sort of got a generic module and then lots of different ways of using it. I don't know. It's never really inspired me, particularly when I look at a 10/10 thing, except, actually I have to say that, except for the one that's got mock running in it. I think that's extraordinary. But anyway, by the by, all the other bits and pieces that they do, they seem alright. Lemon drop thing, strawberry flavoured, what's it, little mixer thing, all of it's just awkward somehow for someone who likes an analog approach. The Bento, which is their new box, is different. It has a lovely large screen. It looks much more engaging and accessible than the little ones that you get on most of their modules. It has a 2x8 grid of pads at the bottom. It has a bunch of encoders at the top. It's sort of inviting you into this workflow where, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, I'm going to touch things on the screen, and I'm also going to encoderize things. What is it? That's a little bit slightly mysterious. They don't really, I mean, I think it's a groove box. They don't like to use the word, and perhaps there's reasons for that, but it's some kind of sampling workstation where you can sample into it and then work that into rhythms and patterns and melodies, which sounds a lot like a groove box. To me, it's a bit like a Digitakt, a bit like a Novation Circuit. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I think we've got lots and lots of these. What is it exactly that the Bento is bringing new to the party? I mean, a new, different way of workflow kind of way? Maybe. But the guts of it is that you've got 8 tracks, and they can be sample tracks, slicer tracks, MIDI tracks, granular tracks, because it's got kind of the lemon drop thing in there, apparently. And then you've got a bunch of filters and effects and mixing that you can do with it. You can plug in a MIDI keyboard and to use that rather than having to use the pads. The pads have polyphonic aftertouch and they're very velocity sensitive and that kind of thing. So I'm trying to get excited about it, but I find that it's another one of these things. It's, you take it away with you. The video, I'm sure, is showing you in the countryside somewhere going, making a track, man, making a track, then going to make another track. I'm going to sample the world and then turn that into a track. And it's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Fair play. Let's give that a bit of a go. It just feels a little bit like a sample track, a Digitakt, a circuit, a polyend. What's he flip? It feels like any other groove box that we've ever seen, an MPC One, for instance, or anything along those sorts of lines. So I'm going to be interested to see what it is that perhaps it has that's new and exciting and different and inspirational that we don't already kind of possess in a lot of these boxes. Now, I kind of thought we were over the maths by now. I mean, I know it is one of the most popular modules ever. I have one. I probably haven't used it in about 4 years. And what I did used to use it for was those very, very handy rise and fall envelopes. 2 envelopes. Fantastic. Rise and fall. Great. Occasionally they looped. Awesome. That was more or less it. There's a lot more to it and there's other stuff built in, but unless you can remember what all that's about, you tend to ignore it and just concentrate on the couple of envelopes you've got going on. That's more or less it. So when Polimaths came along, I thought, oh really? More maths? Are we sure? Apparently no, we are. No. This is 8 channels of maths from Make Noise. Now, Make Noise are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. They're out there. They are doing fantastically creative things in their own little world. And it's fascinating to me that they kind of believe that everyone knows what they're talking about. And there's this huge element, because they are so cool and so hip, that nobody wants to admit that they've got no idea what it is that they're talking about. And so, Make Noise say things like, oh yeah, universal synthesizer system. And we just go, oh yeah, great. I'm on board. Yeah, whatever it is you're saying. Polimaths, yeah, all right, great. Whereas somebody probably needs to say, what are you talking about? Why do you have this thing? So anyway, luckily someone did on a video say, so what's this universal synthesizer system then? And then instantly lost all of their cool because, what do you mean? What is it? It's something that we've invented. It's our thing. Surely everyone must understand just by us saying the words that you would completely comprehend what this is all about. And so your guy from Make Noise goes, let me just check, what did he say? The universal synthesizer system is the idea, is the concept, is this bubbling up of creativity around the possibility of creating a single event, which then goes out into many destinations. Oh, so Make Noise, right? Get this. They've invented the Molt. They have. They've invented the Molt. It's fantastic. And this is the basis of all their current range of modules and bits and pieces. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, single modulations into many modulations, it's a great thing. There's a lot of it about at the moment. We have a lot of 1-to-4 type things. I've got the Rosa here, which does exactly that kind of stuff. The DivKid Trace does a very similar idea in different directions. You're taking a single idea and giving it different outcomes because of different things. And it's interesting, certainly. I just had a moment where you're going, yeah, you kind of believe that you've invented all this stuff, don't you? And there's this sense that we need to buy into this universal synthesizer system as if it's a completely new, life-changing, world-bending concept. Anyway, Polimaths, 8 channels of maths. And I think in the demo he showed it doing a rise and fall envelopes. Yay, that's my favourite thing. But I can now have 8 of those from a single trigger, 8 different ones going on affecting different stuff. Fantastic. I mean, it looks great. I mean, I am taking the piss a little bit just because, sometimes we need to. I think it's important that we don't take ourselves too seriously. Otherwise, we're going to disappear up our own backsides, I think, at some point. But I love Make Noise stuff. They make solid, creative, interesting, completely mystical modules. Does anyone have any idea what any of that stuff means that's written on the front? I don't know. I just don't know. So it's part of their super system, along with the other things they recently released, which now the Jungler, Jamboree, something like that, which again is taking one thing and making multiple things happen, which is great. Love all of that. Keep going, Make Noise. We love you. You crazy cats. This is an odd-looking machine from Vermona. Now, Vermona have a history of making percussion modules, massive, great, big percussion machines, sound sources. This appears to be Vermona taking a chunk of that, a channel of that, and squishing it in to a drum machine. So they've borrowed a drum machine from somewhere, sawn the top off, glued on an analog voice, and gone, ta-da! There you go, which is fantastic. Now, the idea, the concept behind this, I think, is really, really groovy. The concept is you have an analog percussion voice at the top, you create your sound, find that weird, plonky, crackly sound that you want to use in your drum kit, and then the bottom half samples it. So it samples that sound, sticks it into a kit, then you go and make another one, sample that into a kit. And that is its concept. That's its workflow. So it's the idea of being able to generate and capture analog percussive sounds, build them into a digital sampled kit that's digitally run, so you can run it like some crazy rhythm groove box drum machine thing at the bottom, seamlessly, without having to sort of go to your modular, do a thing, try to capture that out, and then put it into a different machine. It's all baked into the same machine, which I think is genius. It looks odd, but hey, looking odd is no bad thing necessarily. I like the differentiation between those two worlds. Your analog modelling your percussion world and your drum machine programming world. Those two things should be different. It shouldn't necessarily blend into each other. You should see those things as individual parts of a greater whole. What's it called? It's called the ding dang, the dong, the drum ding. It's called the drum ding. I don't know. Go with it. Bela is a platform that brought us the Bela Gliss. It is a little strip of a module which allows you to stroke your finger across it, or several fingers, in order to create or use it for modulation, sequencing, controlling, that sort of thing. It's very cool. I've personally struggled with it because I could never remember the combination of finger gymnastics I needed to do in order to access the mode I wanted to use. I found that too much of a thing to get over. I think if you can commit it to memory, if you use it all the time, if you use it for one function or whatever, then it's totally brilliant and very, very usable, very high quality, very high resolution. I personally like to use the Sound Machine's strip over here, this thing here. This is brilliant because it's a lot more, it has much more of an analog feel to it. I know what I'm doing with it. It's just got one button, and it gets stuck in there, and you can record and loop and all those sorts of things and scale it towards different bits of control. Anyway, by the by, the Bela Gliss is a great idea if you can get your head around it. Now, they've expanded this into a bigger idea, which is essentially an XY pad. So it's an XY pad version, but it's brilliantly visualized. It's 4 channels. It allows you to paint or trace. Is it called the trace? It should be called the trace. It's not. It's called the trails. That's possibly a better name for it. The trails. So you can paint, if you like, modulation upon it, and then it ejects that out of an XY output to allow you to control different stuff. So it's a great modulation, live performance, getting stuck in there and being the modulator. within your system. 4 channels. It's looking pretty tidy, I have to say, and if the technology behind it is anything like the Gliss, it's going to be great. And it also looks, I mean, I'm sure because it's a software platform, they will build in multiple modes, which again will leave me going, I just don't know which mode I'm in, and I need to look at the manual again, and that's frustrating. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that if you are able to remember straightforward instructions and information and ways to access things, then this could be a brilliant controller for you. Dinsync, right, they normally speaking make 303s and SH101 sort of clones and fabulous drum machines, that kind of stuff. They've decided to release a vinyl lathe, an almost vinyl lathe, and this is quite brilliant, quite exciting. The idea of being able to cut your own records in the comfort of your own home is desperately appealing. It really is. It doesn't quite use vinyl, it uses this other piece of plastic, which is probably no bad thing because vinyl is incredibly toxic. So using some other material, I'm in favour of that, and they reckon it has 95% of the character and colour of vinyl in the sound that it produces. So it's this chunky arm thing. You connect it via software, you sit it above a turntable. You're going to need your own turntable. It needs to be a turntable of a high torque in order to be able to cope going around while having stuff scraped out of it. And you sit it down on top of a blank, I suppose. You load up your track in software, you apply all sorts of jiggery pokery to it to make it sound very vinyl or something. I wasn't quite sure about that. Are we emulating vinyl, or is it because the sound, are we having to apply vinyl processing upon it so it sounds like vinyl when it's on the record, or is the record itself bringing some, I don't know. These are questions I didn't actually quite get answered, but the idea is that you've got your mastered track, you feed it into the machine, and it will sit there and it will spin around at 33 1/3 and cut it for you in real time. Totally brilliant. And if it sounds all right, then heck, because you could sit there and run off 10 copies and sell them for huge amounts of money. Very interesting. And but just to have your own vinyl without having to go through some process of having to buy 5,000 or order something from someone, it's nice. It feeds into the idea that I just want to do it all myself, all of it. I want to do all the music making, I want to do the processing, the mixing, the mastering, and now the cutting to flipping vinyl, all by myself, because I don't want to ever speak to anyone if I can help it during the process of my creative endeavours, maybe. Anyway, it's about €1,600, I think, so it's not that expensive, although you do have to, as I say, buy a decent turntable to go underneath it. You also need a little hoover to suck away the detritus, and then you need a heat lamp because it wants to be running at about 23 degrees, did they say, or something? So something probably slightly warmer than what your room is in order to get the best cut. It's exciting. I'll have one. Black Noise was showing their Eclipse oscillator, which is sounding really nice, I think. It's something approaching a complex oscillator, but it's really a stereo oscillator, which likes to use wave shaping inspired by the old Putney synth, the VCS3. So it uses that sort of wave folding in order to give you different interesting ways of spreading this oscillation between and in amongst your stereo field. It appears to start off with different flavors or different colors of square waves, and then uses filtering in order to sort of shave those down into triangles and sawtooths and that sort of thing, and then, as I say, scatter them around the stereo field. It's quite an interesting, nice, straightforward approach to something which can lend a different feel to the oscillations within your rack. And the fact that it's stereo gives you this interesting opportunity to have these essentially two oscillators interacting playfully with each other. Dan from DBW had a new version of his Switch. Now, that doesn't sound particularly exciting, and I've tried to get excited about it a few times and then just gone, I don't really know what he means. However, now looking at the videos from Superbooth, I get it. I get what you mean, Dan. I've got it now. It took me a little while, but yeah, I got it. So the idea is that you are switching between two signals. again, it doesn't sound particularly exciting. But what this switch does, I mean, it can just switch, and that's fine. That's good. You switch between two signals, you can have one sound, then you can have another sound. That's fine. But what this starts to do is it starts to blend these sounds at a very high frequency, and it allows you to put these two sounds together in a spliced way. So it's kind of going from one sample to another, and that generates a really interesting sound. When you start to modulate it, you start to change it, particularly in stereo. If you use two channels of it at the same time, it starts to move very, very oddly and strangely. You can slow down the change so it then starts to flutter, and it gives this sort of rasping and a very sort of buoyant and bouncy sort of sound through things. And the idea, as Dan was saying, I think in the video, was that you take what you already have and then feed it into the SW3 to give you a completely different flavour and texture from those original sound sources. And you can flick between the two as well very easily, or the blend of the two. Very, very fascinating. So it's a way of really maximising what you already have without having to bring in more generators and more sound sources. It's using a couple of existing sound sources and using that to create interesting textures. Yes, there's more to this than meets the eye. Now, I've been doing some work lately with Shakmat, which has been very, very interesting because it doesn't appear to be particularly in my comfort zone. They seem to be using a lot of digital control and a few layers and other interesting bits behind the scenes of their modules, and it's been really interesting getting to know some of their modules a bit better. And I will be doing reviews on the Griffin's Claw, and I've got a new thing that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about yet, which I'll also be looking at soon. But at the show they had a couple of other new modules to show. They had the Lancer. The Lancer was a drum module, a ridiculously over-featured snare drum. This is one of those things where, you know, just give us a snare drum, man. I just want a snare drum. Whereas this has every snare drum, which in some ways catapults us back to that horrific time of sitting on your computer clicking through snare drum samples trying to find the right one for your track. This is that in modular form. Now, I'm being a little bit cheeky. It's more than that. It is multiple forms of synthesis and algorithms in order to allow you to craft your perfect snare drum. And then it gives you 256 slots in which to save them. So you do literally have the ability to browse through preset snares. Now, you have control over decay, you have control over the timbre, over the pitch, the harmonic content. You've then got distortion and compression that you can apply to it, and then you can CV the heck out of it. So even the presets are CV selectable, so you can pump in a sequence which is selecting different snare drums continuously or moving from one to another. You can all do it to clock, or you can do it completely freeform. It's a ridiculously deep snare drum. And then they were showing the Ballista Blast, which is a digital oscillator, essentially giving you virtual analog waveforms or FM or wavetables. It had a couple of knobs that you could assign to various parameters, so you can change the bits that you want to change and add modulation to. And all of it runs into an analog filter, an analog VCA, analog distortion, and analog outputs. So digital start through a completely analog workflow, which is very interesting, and but potentially a hugely, massively versatile oscillator within your system. Patching Panda had a very cool looking little grid trigger sequencer. 4 channels, a grid of 4x4 that you could very quickly select a channel, pump in a pattern that snakes its way down that little grid of stuff. That's kind of it. I mean, simple, straightforward, grab a channel, pop in a pattern, off you go. Obviously you can save the patterns, store the patterns, move from one pattern to another, queue up patterns. There's also probability and other rhythm type tools in there, and you can scan through all the patterns with CV, letting you select stuff either on the fly or randomly or completely intentionally. They also had a whacking great big unnamed complex oscillator you know, it's almost like playing a computer game where you're running and modulating carriers and modulators into each other to create fantastically crazy sounds. It has this sort of 8-step sequencer involved in it, a bit perhaps like their Etna filter, which kind of gives you 8 snapshots, so you can move from filter model to filter setup to this, that and the other. But on this oscillator you had 8 steps sequencing for each side. So for the modulator and for the carrier, you could change and evolve and sequence it through a number of different positions to create this evolving, changing, quirky, kind of complex texture. Not entirely sure what's going on here, but this is the 4Cs from Ferry Island Modular. Not seen or come across them before. This, I believe, is a 4-dimensional wavetable oscillator. It looks really curious and intriguing. It has a lot of sort of ferns and organic material stuff going on. I think it's inviting you to organically and intuit your way through the natural evolution of 4-dimensional space involving, you know, changing wavetables and outputs of wavetables. And so you can navigate your way through with the various knob twists and turns, and as you do so you have a main output and a number of sub outputs that have related content in them. So it might be related harmonically, might be related in ratio, might be related in some other form that I haven't quite understood yet. But the general idea is that you get out a lot from this oscillator. It could be a 4-note chord, it could be that simple, or it could be other things going on that are related to one another. It's very musical, very interesting to listen to, and I think I need to know a lot more about it. It's one of the ones I'm going to put over here and say, yeah, I need to investigate that further, because I'm not entirely sure that I completely understand what the heck is going on with that. Not actually at Superbooth, but Tremodular let me know that they've got a new module coming out, the Liminal Space, which is an interesting sort of dual line delay line. We've got these 2 delays, kind of with different circuits and different characters all operating on the same thing. It ends up giving you this simple, interesting and characterful analog style delay. Cool, very cool. I have other Tremodular modules, which I do mean to get into and do reviews of very soon, so hopefully they will be coming along. In fact, I have one right there, the Replicant VCF, which is curiously, I keep thinking that I don't like it, and then you use it and you just go, oh no, that's amazing. It's one of those modules. It trips you up. You're never quite sure exactly why it is that it sounds so good, and then sometimes you think, no, this is not what I'm... Yeah, no, it is what I'm after. It's curious. I will go into more detail on that sometime soon. Something else not at Superbooth, just to throw in here, so I got contacted by Dylan Mixer, who creates sound libraries for stuff. Now, I don't usually cover contact libraries or other sound libraries, particularly, once in a while if it's something really interesting, but I really quite like this. This was his sampling to death of an omnichord, the crazy strokeable playable thing. And it's called Cordless, and it's just a library for contact, costs about 30 quid or something, and was a lot of fun. So I just want to give a shout out to Dylan Mixer. Good job, mate, well done, and I hope people come and have a look. And finally, far and away the best thing that I saw at Superbooth was this. These are fantastic. I mean, beautiful, wondrously fabulous Eurorack cases from SchreibMaschine. I think I'm saying that right. I rarely do say it right. So from this here, Lavandel at SchreibMaschine, I think it is, has built these for me, 3D printed. They are sort of prototypes, I suppose, giving it an idea that they're going to be producing these for sale at some time soon. But we hatched this little project together, this project idea that I'm going to design some actual instruments to go in here, to go in this one and this one, that potentially are inspired by their namesake. So this one is Delia. This one is Morten. And this one is Wendy. And so the plan is to build a modular synth within the context of this case. Trying not to drop them at the moment. So I've got 1U and a 3U row, quite small, quite petite. The concept being that I have a lot of modular that is sitting around not being used, and that's criminal. And so what I wanted to do was put together some thoughtful systems based on the modules that I have that people could then borrow, rent, hire, generally get to use would be the idea. And so Lavandel said that she would love to put some cases together for this idea, and so she has, and I picked them up at Superbooth and smuggled them out of the country. So over the next few weeks I'm going to be thinking about what it is that's going to populate all the bits in here. I'm quite happy to listen to suggestions that I will probably ignore, but it has to be based upon what I have is the idea. And then once they're together, I'll make some fabulous videos and then offer them up for people to hire and to give them a go themselves, to borrow it for a month kind of thing, have a little play, see how it works with your system, try the things out, have a play with it as an instrument, and then make videos and tell us all about it. That's the idea. Hopefully these will get out into the world and become something that people get to use. And in doing so, hopefully support the continuing work of the channel. See, that's the idea. That's the idea. We can talk about more about this on Sunday at the live stream that we're going to have this week. But I hope, just dearly hope, that I could find the time to really focus in and enjoy putting those together. That's going to be key, I think. And then working out how on earth we protect them from the ravages of the courier system. We shall see. Stay tuned. So that'll do, I think. Cockerel's going nuts over there for reasons I can't explain. Probably need to go and have some lunch or something and get on with my life. Coming up, I just had a quick count up of the ridiculous amount of reviews I've got coming, so I really do need to get stuck in to some serious video making very, very soon. I've got things like coming up. Really, I do. I've got things. I mean, I've already got the Seashell. I've got that sitting there. Okay, got that. But I've got things like the Nobular Monumatic. I've got the Omnitune Rhythmy and Beatsy. I've got the Patching Panda Etna. I've got the Zurak Tick-Tock Tack. I've got Griffin's Claws. I've got Jake's Custom Shop Quad ADSR. I've got the RYK Envy Machine, which is sitting there. The Armatech AR110 drum source. I've got the Redshift 6 as soon as they can finish that bleeding firmware for the multi-timbral thing that they were demonstrating at Superbooth. Once they've actually released that firmware, then I can finally do a proper review of the Redshift 6, which is very exciting. I've got the Boom Chick to do, the creative Whatsits. I've got DIY kits coming out of my ears, like there's a new delay from Axis Modular. I've got the One Eye Roll from Bafako to do. I've got the Biopower joystick system thing, a Plinky, tons and tons of stuff. So, hey, why don't you join me this Sunday for a live stream? We'll talk about all of that. I will put in a case all of the stuff I need to review at the moment, so we can have a poke around with things like the Bop and Steve. That's another one I've got from This Is Not Rocket Science. We'll have a look at the Seashell. We'll have a look at the Dig Tac, 4-channel drum crazy machine thing, which I also picked up at Superbooth, funny enough. Thank you very much, Zurak. That was brilliant. And other things. We'll look at all this stuff on Sunday and have a chat about it and see what people think. We'll also chat about my forthcoming potentially awesome radio show that I keep forgetting to do anything about, but I will endeavour to get that off the ground as soon as. Just got to do it, man. Just got to do it. And we can talk about that and get that squared away. That would be good. Otherwise, stay safe out there. Be careful what you're doing. It's a crazy world at this time. Keep making music and enjoying how the electrons flow through our very beings and make us better people. And if you enjoy what I do consider supporting me with more than just your presence. Your presence is awesome. I appreciate that. But if you're going to throw us some money through Patreon, that would be brilliant. You can also throw us money at live streams and in YouTube and other things. You can just write me a check and post it to me if you like. That would be fantastic. I'm quite happy to be sponsored in any way. If you would like to have your product, your event, your company, your band, yourself stuck at the front of a Molten Monthly, just give me a shout, and we'll sort that out. That would be brilliant. Love for that to happen. Also, be aware that this is now a podcast. I'm giving podcasting another go, just converting the Molten Monthly into a podcast so you can listen to it wherever it is you listen to podcasts. There'll be a few other videos going on there as well. The radio show that I hope to be doing will be going out as a podcast also. So just go and look me up. I'm sure you can find me if you try hard enough. There is an old version of me there. Don't worry about that one. Worry about the newer version. You know, I'm sure you can navigate these things. So there you go. Hope that was helpful. And in the meantime, go and make some tunes.